Well, Karen, why don't we begin by your telling us how MTI was established originally and how you made it to the CEO position.
The Mineta Transportation Institute, which is known as MTI, was actually established by Congress in 1991 as part of the ICE-T legislation. It was then reauthorized under T21, and following that, MTI successfully competed to be named a University Transportation Center in Safety Lieu, as well as the Safety Lieu Extension Act. And that was in 2002, 2006, and 2011. So MTI was originally led by Rod Diridon. He was formerly an elected official, and he realized that there was a real need for a university-based transportation center to address the many challenges that our field is facing. And he and Norm Mineta worked together on the concept, and MTI was established as part of the College of Business at San Jose State University. Now, in 1991, MTI was the only university transportation center to be part of the College of Business. All others were really located in schools of engineering. So we were very unique in that regard. And Rod continued to lead the organization until June of 2014, and that's when I had the distinct honor of being named executive director. I come by my background in transportation, honestly, is what I like to say, which is I'm actually a psychologist by education. And so I went through a double master's degree and a PhD, all focused on either counseling psychology or organizational leadership. And as I started my doctoral program, my very first class, on my very first day, I actually had a professor walk in, and he kind of looked about, a classic professor, and said, does anybody in here want to go and collect data at a freight railroad? You could earn a little money and do a little traveling. And I sort of thought to myself, well, that sounds interesting. I really don't know what it entails, but I'll give it a shot. And so I went on my very first work-related trip in the transportation field in October of 1999, and frankly, I've never looked back. I just absolutely fell in love with the process, with research, with the people I was working with and collecting data on. We were investigating fatigue in transit and freight carrier operations, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder following grade crossing and trespasser accidents. And that one experience really changed the trajectory of my education and my life. And I went on to change the focus of my doctoral studies and have since spent my career with the University Transportation Center program focused on all sorts of transportation-related issues. In fact, I was working as the assistant director for a center based in Denver, Colorado. And on an annual basis, I'd run into Rod Diridon because we have mandated meetings for the UTC program. And one day, out of the blue, I got a call from Rod, and he said, the board and I would like you to consider a position as research director for MTI. And we went on to talk a few times, and I joined the MTI family in April of 2009 as research director. And after a couple of years in that capacity, I had the honor of being promoted to deputy executive director. And I worked simultaneously as the deputy and the research director for 3 years until being promoted to executive director effective July 1st of last year.
Well, tell me a bit about MTI's mission. What exactly is it in business to do? What kinds of services or products, if you will, does it provide?
Mm-hmm. As a university transportation center, MTI is really charged with 4 specific things, and that's research, education, technology transfer, and workforce development. So more specifically, when we look at the horizon of transportation, we see that there's an impending workforce capacity shortage. So one of the things we do at MTI is we reach out to middle and high school students and help them to learn about careers in transportation. You might actually realize that many people don't understand that there's different careers other than train operator or bus driver, and so we help to educate those individuals. So for example, MTI is hosting the 15th annual Garrett Morgan Sustainable Transportation Competition with middle school students. It's super exciting. In fact, we have educated over 1,000 middle school students on careers in transportation since we began this program. And every year since U.S. Secretary of Transportation Rodney Slater was in office, at the competition, the Acting Secretary of Transportation provides welcoming comments and answers questions of the student teams. In fact, we will be hosting this event on May 11th, and we're pleased that Secretary Fox and Secretary Mineta will be addressing the students. And most importantly, we have terrific board support in this area. So AASHTO CEO Bud Wright, APTA CEO Michael Milanofi, and of course Caltrans leader Malcolm Doherty all support these teams and actively engage the teams during this one-day, half-a-day event. So it's very exciting for not only us to see the young minds grow and they come up with these exceptionally unique ideas, but to see them present their ideas and to be able to interface with some of the leading minds in our industry is really wonderful. So that's workforce development. We also have a host of programs for working professionals as well. And then for education, MTI has a unique Master's of Science in Transportation Management program. It's designed for working professionals. It's actually an accredited program offered through the College of Business, created by MTI here at San Jose State University. We have the honor of working with Caltrans and their supported network to actually host the classes at 14 different sites across the state of California. Classes are 4 nights a week, and we have the opportunity to really educate the mobility managers of our future, and that's always gratifying to see. And in addition to our master's program, we have 3 specific certificate programs for people who maybe aren't ready to be fully matriculated but really want to take their career to the next step. So we offer specialization in transportation security, transportation management, and high-speed rail management. And what really makes our programs more unique is while we do have doctoral level tenured track faculty members teach some courses, we have people who are professionals and active in the field so that they're bringing the real world experience to the course content. Also, we do research, which I mentioned. So right now, MTI is leading 37 research projects, all related to transit. So we look at everything from bicycle and pedestrian issues to safety and security and land use management. Now, we have been very successful in promoting a rather unique concept for research selection and completion. And by that I mean with our Board of Trustees assistance, we set up a committee called the Research Associates Policy Oversight Committee, or RAPOC for short. And it's comprised of the 7 deans or their designees from San Jose State University departments that we work most closely with. And this group forms an independent, objective body that reviews all of the research proposals that MTI receives in response to our RFP on an annual basis. This does a couple of things. We have people who are professional academic researchers reviewing the content of proposals for methodological soundness, for the backgrounds of the researchers, making sure it's in line with what's being proposed, and most importantly, we conduct a formalized needs assessment each year with our Board of Trustees members, as well as Caltrans, who provides half of MTI's funding, and the U.S. Department of Transportation, who provides the other half of MTI's funding. And through that process, we identify the real high priority needs that our industry leaders and our funding agencies want to see pursued. And so we are very successful in having a robust research program. And then, of course, once we go under contract for that research, once it's completed, we have it go through a formalized peer review process where 2 academics and a practitioner provide feedback. and then the investigator is charged with revising the manuscript to address that feedback, or if it's not warranted, to write a reason why. And then we professionally edit it and format it and then distribute it. Now, oftentimes the completed research leads to the other component I spoke of, which is a technology transfer event. And those events are designed to make sure that the research is put into the hands of practitioners and academics alike. And we host about 15 technology transfer events on an annual basis, reaching over 3,000 attendees. So I was talking about technology transfer events, which are keenly important in making sure that research findings meet a larger audience. And oftentimes we co-host these types of events with our Board of Trustees member organizations. So, for example, we might do something in conjunction with the APTA annual conference. We've done that in the past. Or we'll have terrific board representation in the events that we put together. Just this past month, MTI hosted a regional transit governance seminar at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco, and we were delighted that Grace Kruniken, as well as Steve Heminger, they were able to participate. Their perspective was very unique, and it really brought together all of the information that had been presented during that event. So we have a lot of support there. And so those are some of the initiatives that MTI undertakes and some of the products that we deliver as a University Transportation Center.
Well, thanks for that thorough briefing. I must admit, Karen, I really wasn't aware of the breadth of activity at the Institute. You sound so enthusiastic. Tell me, what do you enjoy absolutely most heading the Institute? What gives you the greatest satisfaction?
Wow, what a great question. What gives me the greatest satisfaction? You know, Doug, there are so many things. I mean, I'm one of the people that love to come to work. I love to be in my office. I love to be with my teammates. We have a terrific core staff that are at the MTI offices on a daily basis, but we also have the pleasure of contracting with 215 certified research associates across the nation and, in fact, in 9 other countries. And so being able to interface with so many professionals and to be on the cutting edge of research and technology transfer is exceptionally exciting. And I feel like we have so much support within our organization and from our trustees. It always feels like I'm playing on an all-star team, and I find that very exciting. And there's a whole lot of administrative work, and that is my particular joy. So I find that very exciting.
Great. Now, you serve on the CEO Advisory Committee of our Board Savvy Transit CEO blog. So let's turn to governance, and why don't you tell us a bit about the board you work with, how the board is made up, and how you bring new board members on.
Sure. So MTI has a Board of Trustees. It's a nonprofit board made up of stakeholders from the national transportation community. Their power is implied rather than granted or required in legislation. And we have 25 of the nation's leading professionals in the industry. And so the MTI board meets in person 2 times per year for full-day meetings. We meet every January in conjunction with the Transportation Research Board annual meeting, and every June in conjunction with MTI's convocation banquet. Now, during those meetings, it's a wonderful opportunity to hear about the organizations of each of our trustees, but they really provide strategic and policy oversight of the Institute. So an example of that, an example of that. In 2011 was when MTI was competing in the Safety Lou Extension Act. We had to determine which U.S. Department of Transportation strategic goal that we were going to address. During calls with our executive board leadership, we talked about that. We talked about what our capacities were, what our areas of expertise were, and we found what was the best fit. Our board also really identifies high priority, quick turnaround research projects that we think we should be involved in. They help support the Institute staff. So even during the transition into the executive director capacity, I was exceptionally honored to have Grace Kruniken of BART really provide me with some honest feedback that helped me in my growth, and that's something I'll always value. Now, our trustees' vacancies are filled by the majority vote of the trustees. One of the standing committees on our Board of Trustees is the Nominating Committee. Now, trustees serve a 2-year term. They can serve multiple terms, but the Nominating Committee needs to make that recommendation. Once the Nominating Committee makes recommendations to the full board, those recommendations are voted on, and then selection is made. So typically through a teleconference with the 8 people who compose the Nominating Committee, we put together full briefing packets of the names that have come to our attention and been recommended to potentially serve on the MTI board. It's a complete dossier including their CV, potentially letters of recommendation, and often people on the phone who may have some exposure and knowledge of the particular candidate. And then we talk through the pros and cons. What sort of unique advantage could they bring to the board? Do they represent an area that maybe is not already represented well on the board? Do they have the capacity to help co-host events or drive our strategic research? And then a list of the candidates is presented at the large meeting and voted on.
You obviously work closely with your Board of Trustees. What do you do as the executive director to keep your relationship with the board really close and positive, to keep it healthy, in other words?
Well, that's a good question. The health of the board and the health of my relationship with the trustees is very important. And it's always an interesting line in how much do you keep your board informed of the day-to-day operations without inundating them with too much information. So one of the things that I've taken to doing as my own personal action item is once a month I send a Board of Trustees monthly update out, and it's presented in categories. So, for example, grants that we've submitted or received, research projects that have been published, congressional testimonies that have been based on MTI-sponsored research, workforce development activities, and technology transfer activities. And that provides them with a snapshot so that they know that we've accomplished a lot, and I want them to keep their excitement up over the great work that MTI is doing. And then in addition to that monthly update, if truly remarkable successes or important information comes up, I'll communicate with either the board as a whole or with the executive committee individually. So it depends on the level of information. In addition to that, we really try to support the board organizations in whatever capacity that we can, whether that's attending events that they might be promoting or just making sure that we're available to partner in any regard that they see necessary. An example of that would be the recent partnership that we had with the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, known as VTA. CEO Nuria Fernandez, who's actually our incoming chair of the MTI board, worked with MTI and her team to submit a grant proposal for the FTA Ladders of Opportunity initiative. And that was really exciting to see how our organizations can intersect to promote something that's so critically important. In addition to that, on a personal level, I enjoy the board members. I enjoy learning about them outside of work, and I try to make sure that I remember things that are important to them because it becomes important to me, and I like feeling connected to our leaders.